Hi, welcome to the webinar. My name is Catherine and I'm the marketing coordinator here at Sigmatek. We're glad you guys could join us today. Just to go over a few controls, there is a question bar either at the bottom or right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to ask any questions at any time throughout the webinar and we will address them at the end. And this webinar is being recorded, so if you would like to share this with someone at your company, please feel free to do so. And today we have our CEO, Ben Terreblanche, discussing the Trump tariffs and just giving some information on what you need to know. So Ben, I'm going to give you control now and we'll go ahead and get started.
Hello, Catherine. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody attending. And so we're going to talk about something that has a lot of uncertainty to it. And I'm going to share a little bit about what I've heard and what I've seen. And then hopefully at the end, we could have this interactive to where we can discuss any questions or suggestions. So the Trump tariffs. And particularly,
hi, Ben. Sorry to interrupt, but we cannot see your screen yet.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Perfect.
How about now?
Yes, that's great.
All right. So what if when I let's see. How about now?
Yes, we can still see.
Okay, so I'm going to start this off with a story about a friend of mine who spent 5 years in China, and he just returned last year. He was in a city called Chongqing. And if you go to Google Maps and you see it in like satellite mode, you can see the city with the airport there. If you zoom in, you can see we're zooming in towards this factory. So here is this new factory. If you keep on zooming in at the bottom, and can you see my mouse, Catherine?
Yes, I can.
So if you see here, you can see this is something to do with automotive, with all these cars parked here. Keep on zooming in and you see these cars. And then, you know, this just keeps going. So what happened here is this friend of mine went there and he set up a transmission plant for Ford. And so this was an automotive transmission plant. And in order to, it was a greenfield project. So he went with a checkbook, basically. He acquired land, but then he had to get some of these permits and things. And so what started causing some distress and concern was in order to get the EPA or their environmental permits, that he had to submit manufacturing drawings of the product, including details about the manufacturing process and in a very detailed way. And this caused, you know, a lot of uncertainty. And I think this is one of the things that, one example, it's an anecdote of how there is concern about business practices in China. And, you know, competition is fine. I think United States is a country that likes competition, that's used to it, but it's where it becomes unfair that it starts triggering concerns. And I think this spilled on over into the concern about the steel industry. So rightly or wrongly, the president commissioned under the section 232 of the Department of Commerce an investigation, specifically an investigation into the import of steel and aluminum. And so they found some things here that I can summarize. The way that I can see it is, first of all, since 1998, there's been almost 100,000 jobs lost in the steel mill industry. Steel imports constitute 30% of steel consumption in the United States, which is 4 times our steel exports. So there's an imbalance there. Since 2006, they call it oxygen furnaces, but I mean blast furnaces, furnace facilities have been closed, and 4 have been idled, so lost 10. And then the industry has been in a break-even mode since 2009. So profits are really under pressure. What the study found was that in order for this, for our steel industry in the United States to be sustainable and viable, we need a utilization of at least 80% of our capacity. And it's now running at 72%. So based on these findings, the Department of Commerce recommended to the president, they had a recommendation, and that recommendation basically came down to, the one point that I failed to manage here is that China's capacity, China's steel mill capacity is equal to the rest of the world's capacity. So half of the global steel production capacity is now in China, globally. It's 2.4 billion tons, metric tons per year. And the demand, the global demand is, the global capacity is this much over global demand. So there is an oversupply of capacity, putting further pressure on the US steel mills. So as a result of these findings, the president made this proclamation in the beginning of this year, and he introduced, amongst other things, this 25% tariff on steel products, coil, bar, pipe. There's a whole slew of products. And he basically applied this steel tariff to everybody, except for Canada and for Mexico. And so along with that, he allowed, he paused the tariffs. He implemented a temporary exemption on 20, I believe it's 28 different countries, or no, 34 countries. 28 of them are in the European Union. And then also Brazil, Argentina, Australia, South Korea are the ones that he said, okay, there is a temporary exemption on those. So what was the result of this? So the result was basically 65%, with the exemption, 65% of imports were exempted. So these countries represented 65% of import. But there was an outcry, of course. But the outcry went on over into negotiations, brought people to the table. So, lots of saber rattling, threats back and forth, but it got people to the negotiations. Another result of this was that prices immediately increased in the United States. They spiked, and then it caused a lot of uncertainty. So, what was the impact on price? Well, first of all, it seems like the price jump has peaked. So the price spike has peaked, but basically the price for commercial grade mild steel went from about 32 cents a pound to 48 cents a pound. Of course, stockholders with lots of material, imported or domestic, then had their inventory values go way up. But you cannot really sell your inventory. You have to sell your inventory at the replacement value. So they were able to charge more immediately for that material that they had in stock. And then some other things happened. So supply became tighter, and the mills with companies using domestic steel in the United States, um, those companies were able to leverage the relationship with these steel mills, and were able to be prioritized that way. And companies that are largely reliant on imported material is now going to, find things, their material is going to be more expensive. It's going to be harder for them to source locally. And if they source internationally, they are going to, then it's going to be more expensive. So this is the impact on price. There is an impact on business, and this, I've spoken to a few of our customers, and of course, be interested to hear from the attendees what the feeling is. But in terms of companies consuming sheet metal or plate for fabrication, I spoke to a large steel warehouse company, and of course they say that their customers are complaining. What about this, the high price, and can I get the old price, and things like that. So complaints, but business seems to be strong still. So it hasn't made an impact. There's a lot of optimism in manufacturing, it seems like. The tax cut impact is in the mix. Is that what is causing this optimism? But there is optimism. This quote here is from a buyer at one of our customers up here in Dayton, where he said his supplier told him, we have the material, we have your material, we have a truck, but we don't have a driver. So labor shortage continues to be front and center for the manufacturers. I know the National Association of Manufacturing is working this angle very strongly about labor and appropriate education for our young people to ensure that they come into our industry. So, all right. So then, what is the impact of all of this on SigmaNest, on a SigmaNest user? So somebody who has SigmaNest, how does this impact the user? First point that I wanted to make here, and what I wanted to highlight, was on getting the price correct. So here is just a simple example. So this is a job, these are some parts. I mean, if you know SigmaNest, you know these parts, TAT7, and it's just an example of parts. Let's say that a job shop is asked to profile cut for a particular customer. So the issue is that you can nest this down, but you want to get the correct price. So this is one area of where this quote nesting module can make an impact, can give you the correct answer. With this new price of 48 cents a pound, this bill of material of parts, the selling price for that is $941. If you, so this is 941. If you look at this price here, if you calculated the price according to the old material value of 32 cents a pound, including margins and everything, then it's 704. So the result is that different. It's important that your price calculations are reliable and accurate, and that you can get to the correct price quickly and easily. So this is the first area of impact that I think has now become even more important, is to be able to navigate these material values and costs of material. accurately and how it represents in your pricing. So the second area of impact is in terms of nesting efficiency. So last webinar, we featured a new nesting engine that Sigmanest is introducing. It's called HD SuperNest. It's a module that fits into your standard Sigmanest as an add-on. And how it works is, so this is a normal Sigmanest nest, very familiar nest, true shape and everything, where the parts are nested inside dropouts and everything. But if you notice this line here, so if we mark that line and then we apply the squeezing function on it, the super nest function, it's going to squeeze those parts in there and get an additional material saving. So this is the second impact. Whenever material prices go up, of course, the nesting efficiency discussion becomes more important. There is an example of a multi-sheet nest where it has 76 sheets as a standard initial nest, and then after the squeezing function, it gets 72 sheets in a larger job, which again, for a particular job like that, just the material cost is almost $1,000. This is only 1/4 inch mild steel material. All right, the quoting point goes beyond just parts that are sent to you as DXF files. This is also an interesting point when it comes to assemblies of fabrications. And I've got an example up here of, let's say this is a fabrication that we are required to quote on. So we're going to run the quoting function. Now, what is one of the functions here now, new function at Sigmanest is the Sigma MRP product. The Sigma MRP product interfaces to like an account. It doesn't have accounting or things like that, like payroll, but it manages the job shop. It manages the job shop and it tracks orders and this, all of the processes, not only the plasma cutting or the laser cutting, the initial first operation, but it tracks all of the processes. So this type of approach where we can read an assembly that consists of parts, more parts than just parts that are going to be profile cut, now becomes interesting. So what the Sigma MRP will do, and just to contrast, Sigmanest will read this. If you have like the SolidWorks integration module, it will read sheet metal parts and it will unfold them, and then you can do your normal process, nest, cutter path generation, post, and everything. But this example is where you have a more complete assembly that consists of other things as well, not just sheet metal parts, bolts, nuts, maybe even tube parts. So what Sigma MRP will do is it will read this bill of material. This is still a picture of the SolidWorks assembly. It will read the bill of material and it will match it up using the Sigmanest integration function with SolidWorks. It will match it up with the item master. Do I have a slide? Yes, it will match it up with the item master of what you have set up for bolts, nuts, consumables, and everything. And then based on that integration, very easily and quickly, you can get to a price for this. And how it handles the subsequent operations, every part, like this part has press brake lines on it. So this part is going to be laser cut, and then it's going to go to the press brake. Well, there we have a protocol, and we have a mechanism for communicating what is going to happen to this part when it comes in from SolidWorks. And the mechanism, we use a template approach. It's like, call it a recipe. So it's a manufacturing method of manufacturing, or a recipe of how this part is going to be made. So you have unlimited number of recipes. In this case, the part is going to be laser cut and press brake. This other part might be laser cut, deburred, and press brake. That would be a different recipe. These recipes or templates are assigned to the assembly in SolidWorks, and just by name. So it's going to be recipe 1, recipe 2, recipe 1, etc. And with that information, the system will completely automatically calculate how long things are going to take to make. For instance, if this part is large and heavy, there is a script that runs for the estimate on the press brake, where it says, oh, this part is too heavy for one person to handle it. We need 2 people. So that will be automatically estimated in. It also, the number of flips, turns, all of that is accounted for. So you end up with a price that is reliable and accurate, that you can then render out to your customer. So again, the whole quoting capability can be enhanced to include more than just the first operation. There is and this is the third point that I wanted to make about supply being tight and logistics and things like that. Let me skip these ones. Let me skip this slide. So I want to talk about this planning and inventory control. I mentioned earlier that with some feedback, people are hearing, yeah, I've got the truck and the material, but I don't have a driver, or some other excuse of why I cannot supply the material to you tomorrow. Well, the benefit of running something like Sigma MRP on an integrated basis is we can predict when material is going to be required. So this is just a diagram of Sigma MRP, the functionality. So the system really starts with a CRM that is connected to your ERP system, so your customers, and then it allows a solid geometry to be imported and a bill of material to be analyzed, the quote generated, and then it has an order entry function. But the piece that I want to highlight here is this planning piece. So while this system is running, it is communicating with SigmaNest all the time. It is communicating with SigmaNest on geometry, on the bill of material. It uses SigmaNest to calculate the correct production time. Let's say you have a water jet, and the water jet is going to cut at particular, variable speed, depending on quality on the different edges. So you're going to get your accurate times and the material consumed. So this communicates with MRP all the time. It also communicates and gets feedback from the shop floor as to what is finished, what is completed, with a type of shop floor feedback infrastructure. That is an example of this is a module that is called Color Offload. Color Offload is a screen at the machine that'll show which program is next. It'll show in a color-coded fashion where these parts, maybe you say, okay, I want to color by work order, or I want to color by whatever is the next operation. So it's very easy then to sort the parts into the pallets as to where they need to go next, and then also to confirm that that particular job was run. And so that is then transmitted back to update the status of the different steps in the process. And it doesn't only apply to these kinds of machine. The Sigma Fusion platform also allows communication with like press brakes, saws, any other kind of operation that may not be programmed, but still where a part might have an appointment to get processed at a particular workstation. All of that information is aggregated and then can be leveraged, and it can be leveraged into this manufacturing execution planning solver. This is a new product, but we're getting good feedback about it. It solves for multiple dependencies of a particular product that is going to be processed, let's say, on one machine, then it moves to another work center, then it moves to another, and then to its final operation. What is powerful about this planning solver is that it is dynamic. Even though you can specify what is called a stability fence, we call it a stability fence. So I could say, no, I don't want to change anything about today's schedule, but let's see what you suggest for tomorrow. And so given that, you can submit another order with a whole bunch of parts, with a whole bunch of dependencies, and the solver will attempt a solution. And if it cannot find a solution, it will highlight bottlenecks or late deliveries. So this is the type of tool that is necessary to give you an indication of what material you should have here by next Friday in terms of 1/4 inch mild steel, or let's say stainless. So to where you don't want to buy a bunch of stainless and just to have it sit around. This tool will run and give the purchasing recommendation as to what given the material delivery times now, maybe you cannot get the material tomorrow, maybe the material will take a few days. So this type of tool will help answer that question as to what material you need to purchase when. So those are the 3 areas that I wanted to highlight. I don't know if I have that slide here. Wanted to highlight about quoting and how these tariffs and how things, the uncertainty of it, and the prices of material is going to impact in 3 areas for a Sigma-Nest user. First being the quoting. You have to get your prices accurate. Second, and the prices are going to change again. So there's this date of May 1st coming up. And it's interesting that the temporary exclusion, the temporary exemption is valid only until, for all these countries, is valid only until next Tuesday. So there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen on Tuesday, even for those. Now, the first one that seems to have moved along is Korea, South Korea. So this is an indication of what I think and what people think might happen now, is that South Korea agreed and they have their permanent exclusion. And the way they got it was they agreed to a quota limitation. Don't know exactly what the quota limitation, I think it is somehow in relation to what they're importing to the United States was last year in 2017. So there's some value in line with that. And so South Korea have theirs. And it seems like the conversation is moving in this direction. Australia is also, they feel they're close. I just saw a news article here recently, and they say that they think that with the quota approach, that they'll also be excluded and exempted from the tariff, and so on. So that's what I said right at the beginning. It's a time of uncertainty, and we don't know what's going to happen. But prices are going to change, and things are going to be flexible. and unknown. So we have to be ready to take to handle and navigate this dynamic situation. The one comment that I read from one of these steel company guys in the United States was very interesting. He said that China doesn't have their ambitions end with steel. They don't want to be #1 steel producer in the world. This is not their end goal. Their end goal is to be #1, the #1 manufacturer globally. And so they have a long-term plan. And it's not going to, it just started with steel. So they have an ambition. And I think it's okay. My personal opinion, it's okay. Just as long as it's fair, then okay, let's do it. But what it's saying for the United States manufacturing industry is that if you look at these different processes that we have in the fabrication world, and in sheet metal, we better run our equipment in the most efficient way possible. We're not going to have the luxury to be inefficient. And then if we run it efficiently, then we're going to be very competitive. I'm very confident about that. And so our values as a company, as a country, and how we do business and everything, it makes us a very, very competitive manufacturer. But we have to do this, we have to do it efficiently. And so brings me to my closing comments. We have people that can help. We have a group of professional services consultants that can engage with any Sigma-Nest user to explore, to audit, to see what else can be achieved, how to improve your situation and how you run Sigma-Nest. These guys are typically, this is Bruce Renfro here, he's been with the company for a long time, very experienced, very familiar with these processes, and he has very particular access here at the Sigmatek development organization, so ideally suited to bring value, and very systematic, structured approach that can we've done discoveries. I know we do playbooks for people where we come in and say, okay, so let's review your playbook of how you can take this forward. And then another opportunity that's coming up where we're going to be talking more detail about these things that I mentioned today is at the Sigmatek Academy, which is in 2 weeks' time here in Cincinnati at the Sharonville Convention Center. And it is an opportunity to engage with developers, with engineers, with other people in the business to see what's the latest and the greatest, and what are the next bottlenecks that can be resolved, and what are the new challenges that we face, and how can we resolve them. So that's what I had.
All right, well, great. Thank you, Ben. Well, thank you all for attending, and thank you, Ben, again for that very valuable insight. If any of you guys would like some more information on the Sigmatek Academy in conference, you can visit www.stac2018.com. And again, this webinar was recorded, so it will become available to you guys within the next few days. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us or visit sigmanest.com to submit your questions. All right, well, thank you for attending, and have a great afternoon. Okay.